I am Jody, and we are the Bass Nerds, and I'm here with my good buddy,
Mark.
Mark. And we have a very special guest today. Please introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is Horace Panter, and it is my great good fortune to have been the bass player with the greatest band in the world, the Specials.
Yes.
Woo-ha!
Truer words have never been spoken.
Right, an icon, a legend here. So, Horace, well, we typically start the podcast with, just kind of getting your the guest early kind of upbringing, how you got into music, did you come from a musical family? Where did it start for you?
I love pop music. I saw The Searchers on television when I was like 9 or something. I joined their fan club. I just thought Tony Jackson looked so cool, sort of standing in the middle of the stage with this
Right.
big black semi-acoustic bass guitar tucked under his chin, and I thought, wow, that's a cool thing. But I just love pop music, and in England especially, there were like the pirate radio stations. Um,
Right.
before like 1964 or 1965, the only time you could hear pop music was like for half an hour at lunchtime on the BBC. The rest of it, it was all, big band or discussions or whatever. It was rubbish. But then these pirate stations came along and they played nothing but pop music. And this real sort of kick-started the swinging 60s, if you like. So I could listen to pop music all day, every day. And so I could hear the Small Faces, the Spencer Davis Group, the Byrds, the Beatles, the Rolling Stones. And it was just fantastic. What a great thing. I was like 11, 12, 13, extremely impressionable. And it was a progression then to like, well, I got a guitar for Christmas. I couldn't play it, but I had a full length mirror in my bedroom and I could stand in front of it and pose like nobody's business. And and then I bought a Rossetti Bass 8 for £6 from a kid at school. It was dreadful. I couldn't play that either, but I met someone, a guitar player who could actually play a bit of guitar. So we formed a band, and being in a band was great. It was the coolest thing. The fact that we were dreadful was really kind of irrelevant, but but I just loved this idea of walking around with this bass guitar. It was really cool. And then when I was 15, me and my mate Anthony, we went down to the Royal Albert Hall in London, and we saw Led Zeppelin,
Oh
Wow.
and
shit.
it was like, oh, it scared the bejesus out of me. I'd never heard anything so loud in my life. I was 15 and I lived in a small market town. This was the first big pop concert I'd ever been to, and it was basically downhill all the way after that. When I went to I decided to go to art college because I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I realized if you wanted to be in a group in England, you had to go to art college because that's what the Kinks did. That's what the Rolling Stones did. That's what. So I went to art college, and guess what? I learned to play a bass guitar. Um, and so I went to art college. Luckily, because that's where I met Jerry Dammers, who was the guy who formed the Specials. And by that time, I was in the college band, and I had a half decent guitar, and I was working with half decent musicians, and then it sort of progressed from then on in, really.
So
Wow.
you went to art school, was it for visual arts or was it for like for musical arts or just in general?
No, no, visual arts, painting.
Yeah, because I know that
Yeah,
you're an avid painter and like I've seen your collections and one day I will snag one of your paintings, I'm sure. But
please.
so the I guess the progression there, like did they offer music classes at your art school or that
No,
just
no,
happened to be
no, no, no. It was just you. No, I was. I've always been interested in art. I'm taking a few shortcuts, I must admit. But like rock and roll was my thing, And luckily, again, I was brought up in a small town. There was not a lot happening, only sort of local bands and stuff. Bands never came through to where I. But when I moved to Coventry, the Polytechnic as was always put bands on. So I saw, I like Roxy Music. Captain Beefheart came through.
oh man.
Man, you ever heard of Man? the
Yeah.
Welsh band. They came through a couple of times. Who else did? And loads of sort of, I don't know, sort of second division sort of pub rock bands and whatever. But it was like, oh, this is how you do it, you know. And I could get up close and personal with these people, and see how it works. So then like I say, I got myself a decent guitar and was able to join the college band. And but this was apart from the academic stuff that I was doing.
Now, at that point in time, when you meet up with Jerry Dammers,
Yeah.
was there already sort of a vision to kind of like produce this sort of, I guess it would be second wave ska? That like the specials would be like you guys basically like revolutionized that whole concept, right? Was ska like immediately part of this, or were you guys focused on rock? Like, walk us through that.
No, we didn't actually play ska till sort of like Christmas 1978. But Jerry was as was I. We were both very taken by the energy of punk rock. You know, which was like here was something which was like ground zero. You know, you could as long as there was an awful lot of emotion involved in it, technique wasn't that really important. But we had technique. But there was like reggae as well, and I found it really interesting because I'd never really listened to reggae that much. It was a thing that was a couple of songs in the charts every year, but it was a totally different way of approaching music. So I found that fascinating for a start. And then when I was playing music with like authentic black practitioners, you know, Limval and our original drummer Silverton. So it was kind of a bit of a learning curve. Limval used to come around my flat and give me reggae lessons. You know, he brings some records around and go, listen, you know, the bass got going, ga, ga, da, 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 da. And I'm
Yeah.
like, what? You know, but then, you know, because I only had a tiny little system, I didn't have a man. But then I went to a blues dance, and stood in this room with these, you know, with 18-inch speakers in like were basically wardrobes, and they turned it up, and it's like, oh yeah, I'll get it. All right. So I kind of I learned that way. So the what became the specials was originally this kind of reggae meets funk rock kind of thing. We play like a punk rock song, then we play a reggae song, then we play a punk rock song, then we play a reggae song. And it wasn't until Jerry came along with Prince Buster Best Of album, you know, and it's like ska was like this unifying factor. So we could slow down our punk rock songs and speed up our reggae songs, and they had that sort of, you know, that sort of unifying factor. So no, we didn't play ska we spent a good sort of two or so years playing something else, but we were just trying to find this kind of new music. But it just eventually seen that ska was the sort of the unifying factor for it. Does that
Now
make sense?
yeah, absolutely. I
Yeah.
mean, you mentioned ska, like you not becoming a ska band until Christmas 1978. What's the significance behind that specific date?
Um, Brad joined. Um, Silverton and Limval did not like the idea that we would play ska because that was the music their parents listened to. Men, I play old man music, sure, you know. Um, Silverton quit, which is when we were at the time we were starving. We'd supported the Clash. We'd done 3 weeks on the road with the Clash. It was amazing. I always say that we started the tour as civilians and ended it as like, you know, it was like our rock and roll boot camp. You know, it was amazing. But Silverton didn't like it at all. It was it was not the squalor that he wanted to live in. So he quit. But then, and like I say, Limbaugh did not like the idea of playing the music that his parents wanted to play, you know, want to listen to. So it took an extraordinary amount of coercion on mainly the part of Jerry to get him to play that. But then Brad joined, and Brad could play reggae as good as he could play rock and roll, and he didn't have any stuff about playing ska. It was like it was interesting. It was, you know, it swung, you know, and it had that little thing on the ride cymbal, you know, ding 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 ding, ding, you know, and he could do that, and yeah, and it just worked. So that's basically where that came from. I mean, Brad, the sort of the second week he was in the group, we recorded Gangsters, you know, So he was the sort of the he was the lucky. He didn't have to pay all the dues. Well, not as many dues anyway.
I mean, because at that point, like once Gangsters was released, that was sort of like the launch pad, right? After this is after the tour with the Clash, or is this before the tour with the Clash?
No, this is after. No, it was
Yeah,
Meteoric,
yeah.
Marco. We recorded Gangsters in like January '79. It was released kind of April, May time. I can't actually remember. But then it got John Peel will play it. He played it solidly. He played it every day for like every evening for like a fortnight. Bless him. And then we started to get press, and then we just started to do all these little club gigs, which became sold out very very quickly. And then we signed a record deal with Chrysalis. We signed Two Tone Records on over to Chrysalis. In the August, and then then we recorded our album in the September, and then we went on tour and with Madness and who we just discovered, and the Selector who just got themselves organized. So yeah, we started with like borrowing 1,500 quid to record Gangsters, and the end of the year we were kings of the world. It was extraordinary. 79 was the year.
Yeah, I mean that at that point you guys were on Saturday Night Live at that in that year. Is that correct? Or
We
is
know
that 1980?
1980. It was like
Yeah.
April time, Saturday Night Live. Yeah, yeah,
Wow.
that was amazing. I we were in the middle, or we just about to start to record the second Specials album. April. The 1980 was like 79 was a great year. 1980 was shit. We started it by going to Europe for 2 weeks and had a day off. Then went to America for 6 weeks. Yeah, 4 nights, 2 shows a night, four consecutive nights at the Whiskey A Go Go in Los Angeles, and then we start the tour.
Mm.
So we were absolutely exhausted when we got home, and the record company were going, "Right, lads, second album." 6 weeks, yes. I was like, you're joking. But while that was going on, it's like, oh, we can go to Saturday Night Live. We can go and spend a couple of days in New York. And we were like, we basically were exhausted. And what happens when you're tired? You get angry. So we started bickering. But anyway, long story short, we went to New York, did Saturday Night Live, and you can see the tension in that performance. And we didn't think anything of it. We just came home, carried on arguing, and made the second album and got all that sort of stuff going. But then fast forward to like 1990, and I'm in America with Special Beat, which was me, Brad Neville, and Rankin Roger from the English Beat. And the music that we played back then, it was enormously popular. And the number of kids who came up to me and said, "We saw the Specials on Saturday Night Live, man. That was incredible." Because it got repeated and people would sort of phone all their mates up, "Hey, the Specials are on Saturday Night Live again. Got to see it." But that was like this little pebble that was dropped, and like the ripples just grew and grew and grew. But we didn't know anything about that because we were back too busy being, bickering and but back in England. But it took like, a good sort of 10 years for that to, for the impact of that to manifest itself. Is that boring or does that make sense?
It's not boring at all. I
Okay,
remember, I
cool.
mean, the
Yeah.
first time I'd seen that performance, I wouldn't have guessed that there was like real tension in the band, but there was sort of like, I don't know, this punk rock vibe
Yeah,
that like
yeah,
you
yeah,
guys
yeah,
came
yeah,
up on, but to now know that like behind the scenes there was
yeah,
legitimate tension
yeah,
that
yeah.
you guys carried on. That's awesome.
I'm
So
not. I'm not complaining. But it was that was what was going on in our heads. But it's a fantastic. I didn't see it until the advent of the internet. I just had to rely on what people told me about. But yeah, it's remarkable. Yeah, and that Telecaster bass, I had bought it that very afternoon in Times Square. You can still see that like the tag on the headstock. I kept it
oh no
on.
way. What do you remember the store? Do you remember the name of
Rico,
the store? Rico?
Rico's, I think. Yeah, it was one of the ones on West 48. With like Manny's and all that kind of stuff. There were all those stores around there. Yeah.
Jody, are you familiar with Rico's? I mean, I know like the 48th Street
No,
was
the only one
that's
I
the
could think
place.
of is Rudy's over there.
Rudy's, that's it. Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
Ah, okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
okay.
Rudy's
so you
Ricos. That's close.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, Rudy's has got the Pensa guitars and that Mark Knopfler plays and Christian.
Right.
But yeah, I've been to Rudy's. I think I definitely one time, maybe twice. But yeah, I mean, we're jumping kind of all over the place.
Yes, yeah, we are. I'm sorry. I'm
No,
gone.
no, no. I mean, it's totally fine. It's looking through some of the history of the specials, like the lineup is constantly changing, and there was periods where the band wasn't doing anything or disbanded and came together. What was like? Was there a common thread amongst like the reasoning behind internal fighting? Was there a person that was kind of generating this animosity or these issues, or was it just like young and dumb? Was it what was causing a lot of the headache? And
Okay, but the specials, the original specials, lasted from I suppose 1977 through till the back end of 1981 when the band split. So there was that's one phase. That's like the golden era, shall we say? That was the first album and more specials, Ghost Town and
yeah,
all that stuff. So then that split. Basically, yeah, young and dumb, and working far too much, and just basically saying yes to everything, and regretting it. And there are those things that sort of keep a band together when they're all facing the same way, they're all facing the same direction, they've all got the same goals. But
sure.
then once you achieve those goals, it's like, yeah, I think fame is all very well, but I think once you've achieved it, it kind of amplifies what you were before you were famous. For example, if
Sure.
if you're if you're if you're if you're a drunk before you're famous, you're going to be an even bigger drunk when you're when you're famous. If you took drugs before you were famous, you're going to take even more drugs. Consequently, if you're quite reserved and shy before you were famous, you're probably going to be a bit more reserved and shy. So do you see what I mean? So we didn't have anything in common anymore, and we'd all sort of go off at different tangents. Plus, there was a class thing. Brad, Jerry, and I were all art students. We had degrees. We'd been to art school. We had qualifications.
Yeah.
Terry and Roddy were children of the working class factory workers in Coventry. They were working class. Neville came from sort of rough country stock in Jamaica. Limval was quite educated, like a middle class. So even the two black guys were different. You know what I mean? So I never realised this till like as I say, till the sort of the fame thing hit. So we all kind of splintered. There was nothing to keep us together. Whereas when we had something to prove, there was, yeah.
Yeah, it
So
makes
so
total sense.
so 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 that was that. I mean, when the specials split, the Fun Boy Three, that was Terry, Neville, and Limval. They went off and they did their thing, and I stayed working with Brad and Jerry for a while, and I played some songs which appear on in the studio album, which has Free Nelson Mandela on it. But then I joined General Public,
Right.
with Dave
Dave.
Wakeling and Rankin Roger, um, and um, and that was that. And then we had this thing called Special Beat, which I mentioned earlier, which was a kind of a bit of a show band, but designed mainly to play to this new market in America. And we did some fantastically exciting shows, especially in California. Really, really, really great. Just sort of picking up on this new, what was that? With the third wave of American ska, with bands like the Toasters, Bim Scalabin, the Mighty Boss Tones, and all that kind of stuff. The last special gig that I did was in 1991 at Anaheim, and we were supported by this 9-piece ska band with this really cool girl singer. They were called No Doubt.
Oh, I'll have to look them up. I'm not
okay.
Yeah,
when I was in general public, actually, we played at the Warner Theatre in Washington D.C., and our support band was this band called the Red Hot Chili Peppers, which was that was pretty cool as well.
Man, that I
was able to mention this to Flea when we supported them at the Isle of Wight Festival in, I think it was 2012, and he was like, "Oh yeah, okay, I remember that. Yeah, you were in general public, yeah." But it's cool. But anyway, yes, again, I'm off. So we did Special Beat for a while, and then there was this kind of Mark II specials, which was me, Neville, Limval, and Roddy, but it didn't have Brad in it. It didn't have Jerry in it. It didn't have Terry, and it was like it was okay, but it wasn't. It didn't have the pizzazz, and I did that for a while, and then we reformed in 2008 without Jerry. So there was 6 out of 7. That's the best you're going to get, and we did that. Neville got ill and he quit. Roddy quit. Brad died, which was appalling. So basically, Terry, Limval, and I sort of carried on until Terry died. 2022, which was a couple of years ago. Yeah, so that's basically the chronology. But reforming, we finally got to the stage where we could make our own music. So we managed to do a couple of albums on our own, the Encore and the Protest Songs records.
Very, very cool. I want to jump back a little bit to the creation of Two Tone Records label.
Yeah. Okay.
What was the catalyst behind starting your own label and doing your own thing versus working with Chris? What was the
Chrysalis?
Yeah.
Yeah. How did that come?
Well, that's what punk rock bands did. They circumvent. They didn't need to have sign to major labels. The Clash sold out when they signed to CBS. You formed your own record label. Fuck that. Then we'll go on without it. But we wanted, so there was that sort of ethos in the back of our mind, because our attempts at getting signed were not particularly successful up until 1979. So it's like the thing to do is to start your own record label, and we wanted to do something which was kind of like an English Tamla Motown.
Okay.
We were also always looking for other bands that were playing the same sort of music. So we originally we recorded Gangsters, and we recorded it on our own record label, which we called Two Tone, because it was black and white and the music was punk and reggae and blah blah blah. So when we signed to Chrysalis, Chrysalis had like Jethro Tull, I think Huey Lewis and the News were on, Pat Benatar, all this kind of stuff, and the Fabulous Thunderbirds for a while. But I'll get back to that. So we signed to Chrysalis with the proviso that we're going to be able to sign other acts. So the first thing we did was we got hold of Madness, who we'd seen in a pub in London, and so we recorded Madness. They recorded, and then we found they're the Selector that appeared on the. Okay, this is complicated. The Selector appeared on the B-side of Gangsters, but they then became a real band, so we signed them. And then there was this band in Birmingham called The Beat. You'll probably know them as the English Beat, and so we recorded them too. So we had this. So it became a movement. It wasn't just one group on its own. So Two Tone became like an adjective. Oh, you're a two tone band, then. Yeah. So I think that was the basic idea behind it.
I saw that you guys did a lot of you would sign and have bands release singles and not necessarily sign them to like album contract kind of things, like
No, it wasn't. It wasn't like, we now own you, or whatever. I mean, the altruism was astonishing. We just signed it for one. We had the budget was for one single only. So Madness signed just for the one single, and then they went off and they signed to Stiff. Selector decided to stay on Chrysalis. And the Beat went off and formed their own label, Go Feet, which was signed to Arista. So yeah, it wasn't. No, we had no. Jerry was not David Geffen.
right. And then like the songs, a lot of the songs have a very political, racial context to them. What was like the vibe and the feeling to writing the specials music with such?
Well, that was the zeitgeist. That was the thing. That was, if you like, that was from punk rock. Punk rock was the voice of the disenfranchised and the disillusioned, and also reggae. The lyrical content of a lot of the 70s reggae was like that. The sufferer, the rise of, Bob Marley, get up, stand up for your rights kind of stuff. So it went, I suppose it went back to the protest songs of the 60s as well, the and all that business. So and that was a kind of a punk rock thing to do.
Right.
It wasn't like, okay, we're going to write. I don't think we deliberately sat down and said, right, let's write songs that are deliberately miserable. It was kind of like, this is what's happening. But we could write songs that had a sort of reasonably heavy duty message, but we could make you dance to it, which was like the great thing about about playing ska and reggae.
Yeah. And then so jumping into Ghost Town, I read that you guys recorded that over 10 days on an 8-track recorder. Is this correct?
Yep.
And then that song blows up. It's on the top. It's number one. And then you guys play Top of the Pops and immediately break up. Is this true?
Well, that wasn't my experience.
Okay.
But I know Limval says that we, but perhaps it was a conversation that Limval, Terry, and Neville had with Jerry when I wasn't in the room. I'm not saying it's not true, but I had no reason. We were because after we did that, we did an American tour. You know what I mean?
Okay.
And I think and then all sort of we all went our separate ways when we came back from that. I cannot confirm or deny these accusations. Yeah, so we say.
And jumping back into the two-tone record days, I know you guys became friendly with Elvis Costello, and he did some production for you guys.
He produced our first album, yeah.
Can you expand on that relationship? What it was, what it's like being friends with Elvis Costello?
He was a fan. I mean, he's a music fan. But he's produced other bands. He did the album by the Pogues. He did a Squeeze album as well. So it wasn't like. I think this was the first album that he produced. But he kind of he got us, and I think it wasn't like he said, okay, change this chorus, rewrite this verse, change the key and all that kind of stuff. It's basically, is everybody in the room together? Are your guitars in tune? When the red light goes on, start. Sure. You know what I mean? So there were a couple of, he did a couple of producey type things. He bashes a tin tray in time with the snare drum on, I think it's Do the Dog or something like that. I mean, and stuff like that. You know what I mean? And he does a bit of backing vocals, and Chrissie Hynde came down to do some backing vocals as well. I think he fancied Chrissie Hynde at the time. As did everybody, you know what I mean?
That sound and Do the Dog. Are you talking about in the very beginning where it's like, like that? Yeah, that's Trash Can.
I believe it's a tin tray. And
is Elvis Costello doing that?
I believe so. Yeah,
that's amazing.
Yeah.
I've always wondered what that was.
But he was just like he became our mate we just basically to get us all in the same room at the same time. I mean, he wasn't like he was Arif Mardin or I don't know, Butch Vig. I have no idea.
Right.
You weren't Quincy Jones. That's right. Anyway.
And then we briefly touched on you guys' tour with the Clash. What I read was Joe Strummer sees you guys performing in a pub and is like, I want these guys to open up for me on tour. Can you expand a little bit on that? Because you said we started that as boys and finished as men kind of vibe on that tour. Can you expand a little bit on that tour and
yeah, that thing about Joe Strummer saying it's in a pub is utter rubbish.
Okay,
I don't know who told you that, but they need slapping. No,
I think I read it on Wikipedia, if I'm being honest.
No, it's pretty boring. There was the local promoters rep from Birmingham, knew us, and he gave us various gigs in and around Birmingham, and he was promoting a gig that the Clash were performing at this horrible club called Barbarella's, and he says, "Do you want to open for the Clash?" And we said, "Yeah, of course we do." So we got there, and the Clash never turned up. I don't know what happened, but the Clash never turned up. So it's like, okay, here are all you angry people from Birmingham. Here's a band you've never heard of from Coventry. There's a great animosity between Coventry and Birmingham, and called the Specials. Well, actually, we weren't called the Specials back then. We were the Coventry Automatics, and we went on and played, and actually went down pretty well considering. Yeah. So a couple of weeks later, the Clash actually did turn up to play Barbarella's, and we got to support them. So the connection was made there, and this promoter's rep was buddies with the guy who was tour managing the Clash. So Suicide from the duo from New York. They were the
banging their head with the microphone.
Yeah. They were the official support band on the tour, but they couldn't make the first 3 shows. So the original plan was that we would do the first 3 shows on the Clash tour. Suicide would come, and then we would, we would go home. But we did the first 3 shows, and Suicide came, and they said, "Oh no, we want you to carry on the tour." So it was then a 3-band bill. So that's there is another rumor that Neville was able to provide some pretty high quality marijuana for Mick Jones, and I think that might have sweetened the deal a little bit.
You always got it when wherever you're gigging is hey, do what you got to do to get the gig, I guess, right?
There is that. So it was, but it was great because we got to know. This was the first time that we'd actually done a real tour. I mean, we didn't get any money at all. If we were lucky, we got some accommodation that night. But it was fantastic. I mean, we learned so much. You go on about the Specials and Ska and the Scatolites and Two to the Maytals and whatever, and yeah, fine. But there's an awful lot of the Clash in how we presented a show. You look at those early 1979 shows, but we would stand side stage and watch the Clash every night and go, wow, if we're going to be good, if we're going to be relevant, we've got to be at least as good as these guys, right. And so I think the Clash sort of set the benchmark for like a Specials performance. So I personally, I owe them, an enormous debt of gratitude for getting us for letting us play with them for those 3 weeks.
That's an incredible story experience. I can only. Did you? I mean, you said like watching them side stage was this, set the bar. I mean, at the time, did you feel like it was magical watching them?
Yes, it was the greatest thing I'd ever done in my life up until that time. Yeah, of course it was. Yeah, I was, well, how old was I? 25. I lived, we sheltered life in a little small town. We went to art college for fuck's sake. I didn't know anything about life at all. And all of a sudden, I'm on tour with this amazing rock and roll band.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then what kind of venues were you guys playing on tour? Was like a 500 seat capacity kind of thing, or bigger things? Like what were?
No, no, it was big stuff. It was, I don't know, like 2,000, 3,000. It was the venues that we played a year later.
Yeah,
The Manchester Apollo, Friars Aylesbury. Gosh, I can't think. But those, yeah, sort of 2.5, 3,000 capacity places.
but they weren't really paying you very much to do that tour. It was more of a you're an apprentice and you're learning on the job type of thing.
Amen. Amen. Yeah. But it didn't matter because when you're young, you can do that. You can sleep in the van when you're that age. I can't, I wouldn't want to do it now.
No,
What's the so a tour of that size, especially at that time, what are you all traveling with in terms of your gear? Like what is
We
what
had
is your
a we
stage?
had a transit. You know what a transit van is? It's like a yeah, but it was like a high top transit. So there's a little bit more room than a normal tranny. And one gig we played a sports center and we stole a judo mat. So we put all the gear in and then we put the judo mat on top of all the gear, so it was kind of comfortable. You could sleep on that. But it had like sort of there were the driver's seats, and then there was another row of seats. So with any luck, you could get all 9 of us or whatever, because no, 7 or 8 of us. It was, and there's another story that we had a tent which we'd stop by the side of the road and put up this tent, and people would sleep in this. I have no recollection of it whatsoever. But hey
Well,
ho.
that weed that Limval got must have been so good that you don't remember.
Neville. It was Neville.
Neville, I'm sorry,
Neville
Neville.
who got this. Yeah, yeah.
I search it. But
Yeah.
but as far as gear, like like the speakers, the backline, like
Yeah.
were you all traveling with that as well?
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, and like what do you remember what you were traveling with on that tour?
I had two homemade 1x15 speakers, separate, and an HH solid state amplifier.
Wow. And
So
then
much.
and then what do they use for monitoring at that point? Like was there like one monitor in the middle of the stage, or you
Oh
just
God, no!
like
We had access to the Clash's gear, to the
that's cool.
Clash's monitor, to the PA. You know what I mean? So there were
Yeah.
we got monitoring.
I've always been curious, like to be able to go back to a show of that size, to hear, like knowing what a show of that size would sound like now because of the advent of all of these extra processors and like, huge multi-track consoles, huge front of house mixing and stage monitoring and stuff like that, and everything getting much more sophisticated. Like, do you find that there was sort of a purity to the sound back then in those days versus, say doing a stage show like Riot Fest, like you guys did it back in
Hmm. Hmm.
2016? Like what's the difference, would you say?
Well, you're right. The gear is a lot more sophisticated. It's a lot better. When the specials were in later in 1979, we went on tour. It was like a package tour. It was the Specials, Selector, and Madness, and we had this the Island PA, and it was just drastically underpowered for practically every venue we played. Plus, we were young, and Brad wanted to hear every drum that he could play in his monitors. And it was like there's no need, if you're going like that, surely you know that you're hitting. You don't need to hear it to know that you're hitting it. But you couldn't argue. This thing is when you're young, you know it all. You know
Right.
what I mean? And of course, my guitar's got to be loud. I'm a punk rocker. I've got but if it's too loud, you can't hear the singing. I don't care. Which is not the greatest way to. So we were. You had to learn by all or make how to make all the mistakes. Okay. Why I can't speak today? Why can't you speak? Because I've been shouting over your drums for the past 3 days. And this, that, and that sort of stuff. So I ended up my sound on stage became very middly, so it cut through
Cut
all the
through,
racket.
right. Yeah.
So it wasn't supposed, bass is supposed to, reggae bass is supposed to be massive and heavy, but it wasn't. I sounded like Chris fucking Squire, you
Yeah.
know, because that way at least you could hear it and
Right.
you knew where I was, you knew where it was. So and this turn the monitors up. No, turn your back line down. But no, none of the monitor engineers had the nous or the guts to basically say, guys, you're stupid, turn everything down, because just because you're loud on stage, it's not that makes the noise. You're playing in front of 3,000 people. It's these big speaker boxes either side of the stage that make the noise. So it's like that. It's like going from clubs where your on-stage sound is important, if you like, because nothing's mic'd up, to having everything mic'd up. Yeah. So and that was, but that, yeah, and I think that's a lot more. I think musicians nowadays, some musicians don't even play with back line, do they? They've got like little modeling amps and all that kind of shit, and stuff goes through the PA.
Or most guys are using like in-ears, and you're hearing click tracks, or you're just hearing your thing and a little bit of everybody else. You're not getting like a whole mix of the band.
Yeah.
I think that's probably what
I'm very proud to say that I am the only member of the Specials to have never used in-ears.
Well, I mean, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad. How's your hearing? Can you still hear?
Pardon?
Nice.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, I think you're right. Like nowadays things are much different. And, I see like if you go on YouTube, people are posting like their monitor mixes and how they're performing live. And
yeah. But some of the monitor engineers we've had since we reformed were fantastic, were fabulous, absolutely amazing. It was like they were telepathic. They knew exactly what we needed. And when we needed it, and in-ears sort of gradually sort of crept in. The brass guys had them, and all of a sudden, they didn't have to. Tim, our trombone player, didn't have to blow his lungs out every night.
That's who I'm thinking of, is the horn section in a time back then. Like how you sort of like prepare yourself for a show of that size with like not today's standards as far as monitoring, but to be able to still play in tune or sing in tune.
Yeah.
That seems like it was quite the challenge.
Yeah, I mean, there were monitors. Don't get me wrong. It wasn't like like the '60s or whatever. You know what I mean? There were, but it was the gear wasn't great. B, the operatives weren't that cool, and C, the musicians themselves. We were young. We had to adapt. We had to change our attitudes towards playing big stages, rather than playing small clubs.
Yeah, and it's not like you guys were a very stationary band, like you were just sort of standing still the entire time. Like you wanted to be able to hear yourself all over the stage as you're running everywhere and dancing.
The advent of guitar wireless systems was just happening. But I never had one, so it was dreadful. There would always be this huge tangle of spaghetti, on stage. And it's like, oh, what the hell are you going to do with this? In general public, I had a guitar, a wireless system. It was fabulous, absolutely brilliant, and I've used them ever since.
So with a stage performance like that, with all of that spaghetti on stage, did you ever find yourself tripping over cables and shit?
All the time. Yeah.
All the time?
Yeah.
How'd that feel? That's my worst nightmare.
No, my worst nightmare was the guitar coming off the strap button. So strap locks were like, yes, that's cool. Well, once I discovered that you could get strap locks, I went out and put them on my bass.
When was the advent of the strap lock? What year?
I don't know.
I never even thought about that. Like I always just assumed that those were always a thing, right?
No, I think I started. I suppose when we started, it's sort of, I don't know, 76, 77. They weren't a thing, but by 1979, 1980, they were, and thank God they were too. No, I've had that a couple of times where you're playing and then just like whoop, the guitar just disappears. Where did that go? Oh dear.
Yeah, was there one moment that scarred you for life where you were playing and the bass fell and the headstock cracked or something like that, or just
No, I've always been good. I've had strings break. That's because I play pretty hard.
yeah.
So I thought I broke a string the other week. Actually, yes. I was doing a blues gig up north somewhere, and the A string went unravelled. The time before that, I broke a string in front of 58,000 people when the specials opened for the Rolling Stones in Coventry.
No. Oh no.
Luckily, it was towards the end of a number, so I was able to finish the song. And we had a great guitar tech who sussed the situation immediately, and I was able to change guitars. And Limval didn't even know I'd broken the string.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
That's
imagine when you're playing in front of 58,000 people, your like tech crew is a little more on top of it than, the transit van
Yeah,
situation.
yeah, yeah.
Mentioned, right? Which, I have this kind of side question here, I guess. Like, there's a lot of, British invasion, UK has a lot of, has birthed a lot of major, huge acts. Was there a lot of like, I mean, ska and like Led Zeppelin don't necessarily cross, but did you guys like run into the Birds or Black Sabbath or anything at this time? Were you friends with any of those people, or is that like a weird question to ask?
We did it when we first went to America. The first week we spent with the Police. We did shows, and they were lovely. They were really nice. And the last show we did with them was in Seattle, and we stayed in that. Was it the Edgewater Inn? Frank Zappa made it famous with like the Mud Sharks and all that kind of thing.
yeah.
But I understood that. Well, obviously that's where Jimi Hendrix is buried, so I was quite interested. We had a bit of time, so that I wanted to try and find Jimi Hendrix's grave. So we were at breakfast, and there were these long hair guys at breakfast as well. And so I went over and said, "Hi, excuse me, if you're from around here, do you know where Jimi Hendrix's grave?" And this guy looked at me and he goes, "I'm with Molly Hatchet." And
That's the only way you can introduce yourself if you're in that fucking band, by the way.
Yeah.
I'm in Molly Hatchet.
And so I was like, "Oh, okay, all right, I'm on." All right. So, and I never did get to see Jimi Hendrix's grave.
Oh no,
But
I went.
but
I
so
got
yeah, I mean, we yeah, did we meet some of those? No, but I have met them because when in the 90s, between gigs, I used to work backstage at the local rock arena. So I rubbed shoulders with Aerosmith and Iron Maiden and Bryan Adams and all those people. Oh,
You ever go? I'm Horace from the Specials.
no, that was the great thing about it. But because those people, that sort of thing didn't phase me. I had a brain and a big car. I got to be the production runner or the catering runner or all that shit, and it was great fun. It was really, really cool. Only once did I get recognised when, let's see, it was a Rod Stewart show at a football stadium, and the support was Belinda Carlisle, and the Go-Go's toured with the Specials in 1980. So I'm sort of walking around, she's coming out, "Hey, I recognise that guy," and all the guys in the crew were like going, and I was like, "Yeah, well, me and Belinda, it was great. It was great."
I mean, you've been like responsible, or at least like part of, like the massive growth of some of like the biggest and most influential bands out there. I mean, you mentioned that No Doubt did that tour with General Public, right? Or did that show with General Public, and same with the Red Hot Chili Peppers, and now the Go-Go's are going out with the Specials and stuff. I mean, that's hugely influential in my book, right? I mean, like No Doubt like references you guys all the time.
Yeah, like I said, when we went over and did that Saturday Night Live, we had no idea. I mean, it wasn't until, like I say, in the 1990 when I went out with Special Beat, and all of a sudden, there's all these kids, and there's all these new ska bands. I mean, I knew a little bit about it because the Untouchables came over in like round about in the mid 80s or whatever. But it was, I didn't really sort of pay that much attention to it, to be honest. I knew there was because with General Public, obviously the English beat were huge in America, especially in California.
Mm-hmm.
And so I knew it was popular, but I just didn't realize how popular it was. But yeah, it's the thing.
That's awesome. I like during, your guys' kind of heyday and doing number one singles and albums, was the how important was like gear to you guys? Were you like, I got to have this type of amp, I have to have this type of bass or whatever? Was any of that important, or was it just kind of like that punk rock, plug it in, turn it to 10 and get going?
Well, I can only speak sort of personally, really. I had an Ampeg 8x10 because that's what
Everybody.
I think that's what Robbie Shakespeare had. I didn't have the 300-watt amplifier. I had the V4, which is the 100-watt one,
Right.
which I thought was great, but apparently it wasn't loud enough. But I had the 8x10, and that was okay. On the first tour, I used Fender Precision. But I got this idea that Telecaster basses were where it's at.
Yeah.
So but they look great. I've still got one. I've got a 1974 on it. It's really lovely. But it's only got one sound, and it doesn't record too well, to be honest. But nevertheless, that's what I use. Then I got another Precision, which I use. Do you want to see them?
Yes, I'd love to.
Do you do all that?
Do we want to see them?
No, I don't want to see your bass.
All right, hang on then. Okay, I'll open it. This is the original 1972 Fender Precision that I bought in 1975. It cost me £165. It's pretty well used.
Oh shit! Yeah,
and it's really light too. So this is the one that I used on Gangsters, the first Specials album. And can you see it? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And that first tour with Selector and Madness. Okay. And I've kept it. It's been in my possession since that. You got one too?
He's grabbing his 70s P bass,
right.
yeah.
Okay,
show off my 1975 P bass here.
Oh, okay. All right.
Showing off our P basses. I got that nice little checking going on there. Mine's not quite as beat up as yours.
Wow, it's hardly been played by the look of it. Yes, nice. Maple neck too, nice. And this is the one. This is the one that I played on Ghost Town. This one's got This was originally. It had been refinished, and the bloke had painted it with, I presume it was bloke, with this sort of metallic paint, which was coming off. It was dreadful, but the neck is really thin. The guy who had it before me had like shaved the neck really thin, which is what I liked about it. I think it's a 1971. So this is, and it's Demarzio pickups.
Yeah, I was gonna say it looked like
old
Demarzio's.
The old Demarzio. Yeah, man.
So this is the guitar that I use on Ghost Town. But then it's also the guitar that I used when I was in General Public. So this is the guitar that played on Tenderness and Never You Done That and all that kind of stuff. So it's got a bit of a split personality. But I don't play this one that much. I don't know why.
I mean, acoustically, I could hear that it's got like a lot of mid-range bite right away.
Yeah, it's pretty good. It's had a lot of work done to it. It got refinished when I was in General Public. That's to this sort of light blue thing. These are the two. But I didn't own it for a while. I sold it in like a twerp in 1988, I think. But then it appeared in a local music store about 5 years ago. So I bought it back again for considerably more than I paid for it in 1980. But hey, it was great to have it back again.
So the pickup, that Demarzio pickup, was that in the bass when you recorded Ghost Town?
Yeah.
That's the sound. Yeah. I've always that has such a thumping, like low sub frequency in that song.
Yeah, yeah,
And those pickups are notoriously hot. They're like
yeah.
anytime
Well,
I would see a bass. Jody and I both used to work at guitar stores, and we would get, old like used vintage guitars, basses come in all the time. And as soon as one would walk through the door, it would usually be in the same shape as your 72, the
yeah,
Sunburst, where it's
yeah,
just like played to shit. But then you see those cream Demarzio pickups, and right away you're just like, yeah, that's gonna sound really good. You
yeah,
know it's
yeah.
gonna sound really good. So did you put that pickup in there yourself, or was
No,
that
no.
you bought it that way?
These were this was how I bought it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got the original. The original pickups came with it. When I've put them on I put them in a Squire that I use as a spare now. Um,
What year is that one?
I think this is a 71. Don't quote me. I don't think it's a seven. I think the serial number is lower than the other one.
Yeah, there's probably some sort of stamp or something inside the like on the neck,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
if you had to remove the neck, but
I
who
don't like to
cares?
take it to bits, but
Who
yeah,
cares? It's special, pun
yeah.
intended.
So that's the one. Yeah. So there. Ooh.
I wonder. So where was the fascination with the Telecaster bass? Was it just a visual thing, or
Yeah,
you got it? You
yeah,
said you got it in your head that you were supposed to play that.
yeah. And I was a big fan of Little Feat, and there were some photos of Kenny Gradney with them. In
Yeah.
fact, it wasn't a Telecaster bass; it was just a Telecaster bass shape. It had like twin pickups like a jazz, but I just thought, oh, it's obviously a Telecaster bass, then so I'll buy it. But but again, it was a visual thing. Yeah,
Yeah, it's kind of like the Rickenbacker, right? I mean, I like Ricks. They serve their purpose, but that's another like it does that one sound, you know.
this is what I'm playing at the moment.
Yes.
This is lovely. This is a 1974.
With
Yeah,
Where
Bellini's in it.
that's
it's
yeah,
got the Geddy Lee mod, the Bartolini pickup.
yeah. Because I took I could play really hard, so I was playing it, and it would pop against the little knob on the original pickups, which was a shame because the neck it's just really lovely. It's really thin, it's really light, and at my time of life, that's a big deal. I can't have heavy heavy guitars, but it's nice. I don't use the bridge pickup at all. It's just this, but it's really lovely. I never thought that I would I'd go to one of these, but it belonged to a friend of mine, and I would play it whenever I go around his house, and he'd go, "Do you want to buy that?" And I had the money, and so I bought it off him. But it's lovely. It plays really nice. Yeah.
And when did you pick that one up?
Pardon?
When did you pick that one up?
Only about a year ago.
Oh, nice.
I haven't had it very long, but it's yeah, it's the current weapon of choice. Yeah, it's lovely.
Very cool. Very, very, very cool. Um, I wanna briefly at least touch on you became a special needs teacher for a while.
Yeah.
How did that all come about? Was there a desire? What?
Well, I kind of I didn't get fed up with playing, but the specials, the Mark II specials, which started from sort of 94, 95, I just got fed up with it because it was going nowhere fast. I was married. I had a young son. I had to put food on the table. I had a mortgage to pay, and we were doing these tours of America and coming home with very very little money. And we had an album out, which I was reasonably pleased with, but wasn't in the shops. And like, what's the point, guys? So I retrained as a primary school teacher. So the degree that I got in 1975 finally served some purpose, and so I did what they call a postgraduate certificate of education. So there was me at like age nearly 40 with these sort of 24-year-olds, and I got a teacher's badge. and I ended up working in a special needs school as the art department. It was only a small school. There were only like sort of 72 children in the whole place, but and class size perhaps maximum of 10. But they were 10 kind of difficult children. But it was great when it was good. It was very, very good, and when it was bad, it was horrid. But once a month, miraculously, this amount of money appeared in my bank account, and which for, if you're a self-employed musician, to have that sort of security was fantastic. So, there you go.
Wow.
So yeah, I did that, and I did that from 1998 through till 2008 when Limval called me up and said, "What do you think about getting the Specials back together?
Right.
We can make lots of money." Easy, isn't it? Difficult choice: shouting at children, being a rock star. Let me think about that for a moment. It was.
Well, you also wrote a book too, Ska'd for Life, right?
Yes, I had some. I sprained my ankle at school. I can't remember how, but so I had all this time off, and lots of things. A couple of sort of fans, if you like, had written books, and it was from like a fan's perspective, and it was factually very inaccurate. Like Joe Strummer seeing us in a pub and then asking us to go on tour. You know what I mean? And my parents live where I was brought up, Kettering. That's where they published the music press in England. So my father knew somebody who worked down there as a janitor or something. So they got the music press the day before they hit the streets in London. So they had amassed 13 scrapbooks full of two-tone related interviews from the weekly music press. And I was always the guy who wasn't out of his head or wasn't drunk and who remembered stuff. So everybody, whenever the band was around and people go, "Hey, do you remember that gig in Hamburg?" Ask Horace, because he remembered all that sort of. So I was the guy who remembered all that shit. So with those sort of things with those factors there, I wrote the book because everybody had written, like I say, they're these really factually inaccurate books about the Specials. So let's write one from my point of view that's actually got a bit more truth about it. So I did, and I also kept diaries. So I kept a tour diary when we went to America the first time. I kept a tour diary when we went to Japan, and so I could include those in it as well. And I think I wrote it in 2004, got the publishing deal in 2005, and it got released in 2000. It got published in 2007. Wow. Yeah.
Well, I think having journals is like, it's always a thing I've wanted to do, and I just never put pen to paper that way. But
I still do it. Only now I just put them on Facebook. Even in the little band that I'm playing with at the moment, it just became a really great way of unwinding after a gig. You're high on adrenaline.
Yeah.
It's midnight. You're finally back at the hotel. You can't sleep, so you can either go down to the bar and get into a lot of trouble, or you can get the diary out and just and put it all down. And that was, if in a way, it was how I could decompress after a gig. But it's become a nice way. Perhaps one day I'll get them all together and see what they look like.
Yeah, I bet that's incredible for sure.
But it's a good thing. I would encourage Jody. I would encourage you to put pencils to paper.
Well, I think what you said is now we've got Facebook and Instagram, and those have become my digital journals. It's not quite the same.
You've got somewhere to publish them, and I'm not the only one who does this. There are a few musos who sort of put stuff out there. It's good.
For sure. And then I know you went to school for art, and art seems to be still very prominent in your life. And I know you've got a website up where people can buy prints and stuff like that. Is that something you're still, like, to this day currently painting and designing?
Oh yeah. I mean, I because when the Specials reformed, so 2009, we had a lot of downtime, so I started painting. I started painting pictures, and my wife sort of come back from work, and she go, "Oh, you painted another one," and I'm like, "Yeah, well, and it's like, I think we could sell these, so we started just to sell them, and I saw that Ronnie Wood. Would do prints, and there'd be sort of two. Okay, well, perhaps we should do prints of these, because then they're affordable. Some people can spend, you 150 quid or something on a nice picture. So blah 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 blah. So and I knew that the specials weren't going to last forever. So let's have something that is going to carry on and provide a bit of income for when I'm not, playing Message to You, Rudy, or Nightclub. And that's what's happened. That's been going on for like sort of 12 years now.
Very cool.
So yeah, it's good. It keeps me out of trouble. Yeah,
that's awesome.
Do you have any exhibitions currently in the States, or is everything in the UK at the moment?
There was a thing called Poster Child Prints in Los Angeles. They were doing our stuff a while back, but I haven't heard from them for a while. We have shown in Los Angeles. I'm connected with a charity in LA called Musack, which generates funds to for musical education and musical equipment for disadvantaged kids. They've got 3 or 4 sites in America, and that their sort of fundraising activities center around a concert that they have every year in Hancock Park. It's this guy's backyard. But it's Hancock Park. It's like Beverly Hills Light. It's a pretty big backyard. But like people like Rancid and Fishbone and whatever come along and play, and they sell tickets for it and so on. But that's what and they have my art. They auction bits and pieces from it. So there's no gallery representation, but there is good places where you can see it.
Very cool. Yeah, it seems like there's. I'm actually looking up Musack right now. They have quite a few locations just all over the U.S. and even in El Salvador.
Yeah, and
looks like they're
the one in Haiti as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, that's really special.
That's a cool thing. In fact, this time last year, I was over in Los Angeles, and we did a tribute concert for Terry, which was amazing. It was Limval, myself, Kenrick Rowe, Nikolai, the drummer and keyboard player from the specials, and we had a band with JG and Aaron from the Mighty Boss Tones, Jesse Wagner from the Agrolites.
Wow.
And we did like 3/4 of an hour of stuff. We were joined Chris Dowd and Angelo Moore from Fishbone, and that was fantastic. It was so cool.
That's next level energy.
Can I tell you that? Let me tell you that story. We played at some winery out in up in Silicon Valley, and we were on with Fishbone. Fishbone were the only band I was ever worried about sharing a stage with, because their stage show was just sort of fabulous. And they were lovely. Before they went on, Norwood, their bass player, now there's a bass player, came and sat down next to me, and he goes, "Horace, you don't know what you did. We were these black guys. We were in the Devo, and we went to see Dance Craze, and we formed a band." And which was like amazing, and it was like, the whole tour was finally worthwhile, to hear someone, monster musician like that come up to me and say that was just like, wow, that's so cool. So that perhaps that answers your question about, what was, the influence that you've had. Perhaps I got it then. You know what I mean? Perhaps I finally realized, what I'd done, But that was a cool thing. Yeah, but they do the Musack thing as well. Yeah, but we that's right. We had this show like this time last year, which was fantastic. Really, really good.
I mean, Norwood is not one to mix words either, so you know that he definitely meant it.
Yeah.
Sure.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
He's not playing in Fishbone at the moment. Is that correct?
That's right. I've seen some current footage, and no, he ain't. I think Chris is.
I know that they had some legal issues.
It's a different drummer too, I think. as well.
Yeah, I know they had some legal issues because there was a performance where Angelo was being Angelo, and I guess he like went to stage dive or something, and his foot hit a fan's head, and then there was just this massive lawsuit afterwards. It's just such a shame.
Hey, okay.
Yeah, their show. I mean, I've seen them on many different size stages, and it is impossible to not just have the best party of your life
Yeah, yeah,
when they're
yeah.
on the stage.
Well, they said to me, they said like Fishbone, we're a cross between Parliament Funkadelic and the Specials. I was like, wow,
Wow.
yeah, okay,
That's
yeah,
really that
yeah,
is one of I think that's the most accurate description of a band I've ever heard.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
that's how I would describe them. Like,
yeah,
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 that's it for
yeah.
sure.
Um,
Uh,
I want to. So you mentioned that you're playing in some other like I don't know better way to describe it, smaller bands or things you're just kind of uh, playing around town. I know Terry passing not long ago kind of put the probably the end to the specials. Is there any plans to you did just say that you guys had a benefit for Terry. Are you planning on doing any more of those? Is there any future for the specials? What's the outlook look like?
The specials are done. That's it. We are at the process of finishing up off a live album, which was recorded in 2019 when we did 4 nights at we played in the ruins of Coventry Cathedral. It was a fantastic run of shows. They were 3 of the 4 nights were recorded, and they will be released hopefully in the UK before Christmas. So
Of
that,
this year?
but that will be the end of special stuff. Me, I am a side project that I was involved with. It's like a blues power trio. It has now taken center stage. I have to keep playing, so I'm doing that. We have 6 shows, um, 4 shows in October and 6 shows in November. So we're getting a bit of work. We can't get arrested, but I don't care. I'm having great fun. I'm playing music that I like with people that I like, and that's really good. I'm also playing with a peculiar Welsh guitar player called James Oliver. Um, Last year he played 327 shows.
Wow.
He wears rhythm sections out. I am his like seventh reserve bass player. So when he plays in my neck of the woods, I work with him. He's in America. He's got a week in Connecticut in May, and I think he's doing Texas. I think he's playing in Antones. So September. He's really looking for. He plays a 1954 Blackguard Telecaster. It's great. It's just like being in the specials. He plays everything far too fast. It's great. It's sort of country, rockabilly, blues, everything. That's a lot of fun. But the current my main thrust is this thing called the Dirt Road Band that I'm currently working with.
And then, I mean, I feel like we maybe should jump into some rapid fire questions here. Mark, do you have anything else you want to touch on before we get there?
no, I think this is perfect timing.
All
Sure.
right. So, Horace, typically what we do here, once we get towards the end of a podcast, I have a list of about maybe 10 or 12 simple this or that kind of questions that are related to bass and music in general.
Right.
Uh, and there are no wrong answers here. And if you just want to pass, we'll pass. And Mark might come in at the end with some non-bass related questions. We'll see how that goes.
All right.
So, are you ready?
Yeah, go on.
All right, rapid fire questions. Here we go. Active or passive basses?
Passive.
Favorite fretboard material?
Oh, crikey. No. I've got a Fender. I've got Fender Jazz with a maple neck that I quite like. My original 572 Precision is rosewood. I don't know what the Rickenbackers. Can't answer that one.
All right. Do you have a favorite speaker size?
No. Currently, I'm using Vanderklay, which is
Yeah.
I think they're made in Holland. They're 12s. I have two of them. They're fabulous.
Okay. Name one or several of your favorite bass players.
James Jameson, Donald Duck Dunn, Tommy Shannon, Keith Ferguson.
That'll work. Yeah, you can
I think you got enough to be going on with there.
Do you, just side note, do you happen to know Tommy Shannon?
No, I've never met him.
I've been emailing him relentlessly, trying to get him on the podcast, and I've gotten zero response from him. And he's one that I hope he's on a bucket list for me for sure. What was your first stringed instrument?
A nylon stringed K acoustic guitar, which I never learned to play.
All right. Do you have a piece of gear you regret getting rid of?
Where would you like me to start? Yes, in 1980, I bought a Gibson Thunderbird, a 1964 Gibson Thunderbird. I loved it. It was really nice. And I also had a Hamer 8-string, which I got from the Hamer guy, like the one Nick Lowe used to have.
Yeah.
Three-quarter sides. I left the specials and the rent was due.
Yeah. No,
so
we all get rid of our gear. Right?
Oh, get out of town. I had one of those the Epiphone, like the Jack Cassidy ones, the big semi-acoustic ones.
Yeah.
They look great, but they sounded crap. I really wish I'd have that back again. I'd put some sort of decent pickup in it, make it sound, because they look really, really good.
Very cool, for sure.
Okay.
Hard case or gig bag?
If I'm flying, flight case. If I'm doing a local one, gig bag.
Do you have a favorite gig bag that you go to that you use?
Depends what guitar I'm getting. No, I have two. So
okay. Tube or solid state?
Tube.
Okay.
Tube.
What's your current rig?
It's a two Vanderklay 1x12 speakers and a Spartan amplifier that comes with it. It's little. I can the drummer and guitar player in my band can pick the speaker up. I can't. But right. Weight restrictions is a priority these days.
For sure. And then you're using. We saw your couple P basses and maybe that Rick bass. Right?
The Rickenbacker is the current weapon of choice.
Yeah. Okay. Do you have a favorite pedal?
If I may quote Wilco Johnson, I'm a guitarist, not a fucking cyclist.
All right, we're gonna
fuck you, Jody.
Do you have a favorite string type, brand, size, anything like that?
Bog standard boring rotor sound, 105 to 405. To 145 to 105.
Okay. Do you have a favorite hardware finish? Black, chrome, gold, nickel?
No, not at all.
Okay.
No preference.
Do you have thoughts and feelings about relict instruments?
There was a thing on one of the bass sites that I sometimes look at, and this bloke had bought this really nice bass, and he wanted to relic it, and he said, well, how do you think it? What's the best thing I can do to relic it? And I answered, I said, you better start doing some gigs then, mate. No, fair enough. I've played with musicians who've got guitars that look like they've been dredged up from the wreck of the Titanic.
Right.
I don't care, to be honest.
Okay. That's a great answer.
I mean, people. There's an industry to make guitars and basses look like the ones that you played,
Right,
and
exactly.
Limval, like the way that
Yeah,
you all
yeah,
play and
yeah,
get all of that wear, it's just like, oh, you should spend, several years running around like a fucking
yeah,
madman on
yeah,
stage.
yeah,
That's how you
yeah.
relic it.
Yeah, and
Well, and sleep.
perspiring profusely, like Rory Gallagher or Stevie Ray Vaughan. Yeah, yeah,
Right. And you got to make sure that your sweat's the right pH level,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Right. Going around in a transit van, sleeping on top of it, of a judo mat on top of your bass while
I,
you're.
I, I say all of this recognizing that I work for a company that does impeccable relic work.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, do you have a band or artist you wish you could play with, either for like a tour, an album, whatever, anything like that?
The Fabulous Thunderbirds. I'm going to see them. They've got some shows in well, it's only Kim Wilson these days, but it's they're playing in Leamington Spa, which is just down the road from me, in January. I can't wait. Um, Perhaps I would have liked to have been Kenny Gradney in another life in Little Feat, but I couldn't just jump in and play those things. Because he's the master of syncopation and the right note. Yeah.
Okay. And then my last question here is a new question recently added. When you go to the grocery store and you go grocery shopping and you've got your cart full of groceries and you go back to your car and you've unloaded all your groceries into the car, now you have an empty cart. What is your shopping cart etiquette? Do you put it back in a cart corral? Do you bring it back inside, or do you just kind of leave it wherever's
Oh,
convenient?
I always put it back and I always tidy up the area as well, because some people, they just sort of throw them there, everything. I'm very
Oh,
OCD
yeah.
about that. Sorry.
Yes.
No, no, no. That's cool. That's the common thread here. Is most people are more responsible and put their carts away, and we appreciate you for that. So those are all the rapid fire questions I have, and I'm going to turn it over to Mark because I'm sure he's got at least a couple questions.
Sparkling or still?
Still.
What's your favorite biscuit?
Um, Dark chocolate digestive.
Oh, you're a digestives guy. I'm a hobnobs guy. I like the milk
Okay.
chocolate ones.
Well,
Do
get
you,
thee behind me, Satan. Hobnobs are deadly, man.
what do you mean by deadly? Like they're deadly addictive?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. That's why you look the way you do at your age, and I look the way that I do at my age.
There you go. There you go.
There you go. What are you? Are you an avid tea drinker, or do you prefer coffee?
I limit myself to one cup of coffee a day. Otherwise, it's tea.
And when you do coffee, do you do like European size, or do you do like American size? Like when you say one coffee, what does that mean for you?
Well, that's a cafetiere. So
Ah,
that's like one scoop of the stuff, boiling hot water, leave it for 5 minutes. Boil up some milk. It's a nice ritual. Press the thing down, and then
mm.
so it's not instant. No.
Do you have beans that you like a brand of beans that you like to go towards, or is everything pre-made?
As in baked beans,
No, 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 no. I'm sorry, coffee beans.
coffee
You
beans.
grind your
No,
own.
no, no, no. It's a local supermarket, Colombian brand.
What's your like ideal British breakfast?
Oh, crikey. Well, that varies. If I'm on holiday, it's what they call the full English, but a small one, sausage, bacon, proper bacon, not American bacon. I happen to add.
Oh,
No, no, like Canadian bacon,
ah,
So yeah, okay. Um, um, Fried egg, sunny side up, um, black pudding, which is like a disgusting thing made of pig's blood. That's but like I say, it's when I'm on holiday, and baked beans and possibly a grilled tomato. Otherwise, it's like a cold porridge with blueberries and raspberries with some honey.
that sounds delicious too. But I want to know what is this black pudding? Like it's just pig's blood. Is that a
It's kind
sauce?
of like haggis, which is kind of like suet and intestines, but it's made with pig's blood. It's a
Oh,
traditional English.
disgusting. What are you?
Yeah,
Hey, we're the land of McDonald's, Jody. I don't think we get a chance. I don't think we have the.
yeah.
I don't think we get to judge here.
But
Cold
just
blood.
you Google it, black pudding. It's an acquired taste, definitely. But I quite like it.
Are you eating it straight, or is this
Oh no,
part
it's
of like
cooked.
a
It's fried.
right? But is it something that you eat by itself, or is you using it as a sauce, or
No,
Like,
it's like a sausage. It's like a
okay.
but it's chopped up
Yeah,
into like a little round medallion-y kind of thing.
interesting. I've never heard of black pudding.
Black pudding. Yeah, yeah.
All right. Okay. What are your sort of like favorite holiday traditions outside of your ideal holiday breakfast?
If I may quote Jean-Paul Sartre, hell is other people. Um, so so holiday, no. A holiday is like no one else. Well, me and my wife, and nothing else. So solitude, and the dog, perhaps. A beach with nobody else, and just me, my wife, and the dog, and that's I don't care if it's raining or if it's windy or whatever. I just walk for miles. So that's my holiday thing. I don't do crowds. I don't mind the sun. I like the weather in Los Angeles. Um, Last time I went to America, I had a week in Rapid City, South Dakota. I loved it. It was absolutely brilliant. It's this tiny little town. Well, Sturgis is up the road,
Hmm.
and Deadwood and that sort of stuff. And it was my perfect America break. I'm not a city kid. I've lived in cities, but I don't. I lived in Coventry for a while, but and I don't like London. I like visiting it, but then it's nice to leave it behind. So yeah, solitude for a holiday is perfect for me.
What brought you to South Dakota for a week?
Do you know the writer James McMurtry, the singer?
I
James
don't.
James McMurtry. Okay, his father is a screenwriter, but he has a career as a singer songwriter, and I really like him. He has a song called South Dakota, and the second verse goes, "When my brothers picked me up, we got way deep in our cups. We must have tore old Rapid City down." And I just thought, wow, that sounds really cool. And I looked up Rapid City on my Rand McNally, and and I'm like, wow, that's cool. And I was going over to Los Angeles to do this charity thing. So it's like while I was out there, as opposed to going back to England, I went via Rapid City because I'd never been there before. And I always liked the small towns in America when I was on tour, especially with general public. We played a lot of college towns, like sort of Athens, Georgia, Columbus, Ohio, Ann Arbor, Michigan, or whatever. And I always liked them because they were all like sort of 6 blocks each way. And you knew there was going to be a laundrette, which of course is imperative when you're on tour. There was always a good secondhand record store. There was always a good thrift store. You know what I mean? So, and you could you could get the feel for a place in a matter of hours, and I thought I really like the small towns. So yeah, that's why I went to South Dakota. It was great. I got my little car and sort of pootled around Custer State Park. I saw buffalo. By the side of the road. I've never seen a buffalo before. Wow, that was cool. I'm from England. What do you expect?
Yeah. Okay.
No, it was great.
So you were essentially just inspired by a poem, or just a
Yeah, well,
writing.
the second verse of this tune, yes, yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah, and it just turned out to be this like beautiful holiday, like
Well,
week-long holiday.
I had this thing about 10 years ago about country music, and I really got into it, and I got a lot of books about it. And there's what they call the flyover states. When you're in pop groups, British pop groups especially, you only go where the water is.
Mm.
Your tour is like Boston, New York, DC, Philadelphia, and the only reason you get to play in Chicago or Minneapolis or Denver is to get from one bit of water to the other bit of water, which of course is Vancouver, Seattle, Portland, San Francisco, Los Angeles, San Diego. And if you're lucky, to get home, you go via Texas. You know what I mean? But so there's this massive bit of America in the middle that it just gets ignored. And that I've done some of it, like I say, in general public, but it just fascinated me. All these, and they all listen to country music. Why? What is it so amazing about country music? And one time, it was on a special beat tour. We finished in Santa Fe, and the next gig in 2 or 3 days' time was in Minneapolis. So the we had to deadhead it. We had to drive from right down there to right up there. And the guy in the merchandise truck was basically the rider truck was basically doing it on his own. And I says, "Look, do you want a hand? With the driving?" He goes, "Yeah, of course I do." So me and him, we took turns and we drove from Santa Fe to Minneapolis. But it meant driving through, all those, all that. And we'd stop at Holiday Inns and all this sort of stuff. But I'd listen to country music on the radio, and all of a sudden it made sense.
Yeah.
Driving through that part of America and listening to Waylon Jennings and I don't know all that sort of what I can't remember what stuff it was, but I just really got into this part of America that I knew about but didn't know. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
And it was and again through the music. So I really got into country music. So South Dakota, became nobody plays in South Dakota. Did I mean I do they?
They do. Yeah, I agree. Nobody.
Yeah.
But because it's so secluded, it's I think Denver was the nearest airport. Although I think sort of Sioux Falls was I think you might be able to get there. But there was an airport in Rapid City, but Denver was sort of the nearest sort of major city. And I just thought that was fantastic. America's huge. I kind of forget that, because you're in an aeroplane and 2 hours later you can be somewhere else, but you sort of forget the fact that you traveled 700 miles.
Yeah, really quickly. I mean,
yeah.
I mean, country is kind of the ultimate driving music. That just I've been finding that, like, as I've been getting older. My mom used to listen to it on the way to school. She would drive me to school, and we'd be listening to like Shania Twain or whatever, newer country at the time. And now that I'm older and driving my kids around, like if we do like any sort of like extended driving, I'll put on the same stuff my mom, and then also, of course, Waylon Jennings, like the outlaw country stuff, because it just has this rhythm and sensibility, and you're driving through this land where a lot of that music either comes from or what speaks to them, and it just feels right. It's just like the right rhythm.
Yeah,
That's kind of cool. That's exciting. My last question:
right.
Where did punk rock start, in the U.S. or in the U.K.?
In the U.S.
Oh shit. Okay. Are you gonna get kicked out of your country for saying that?
At my age, I really don't care. What is it? What is it? Perfectly honest, I don't give a damn. What was that?
Oh yeah, frankly, I don't give a damn.
That's from Gone with the Wind.
Yeah, that's right. Yes, frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn. No, it was America, wasn't it? It was Blue Cheer, MC5. All that kind of stuff. I met Wayne Kramer. What a lovely bloke. He was great. Yeah, really, really nice. Yeah, but the New York Dolls. I saw the New York Dolls they played Warwick University, which was just up the road from when I was at the art college in 1974 with the original drummer. And Malcolm McLaren managed them, and Malcolm McLaren managed the Sex Pistols. So I think it originated in there, and then Malcolm McLaren sort of like introduced it to London and all that stuff. Yes, no,
yeah, yeah, that's amazing. I mean, like some might even argue the band Death from Detroit, Michigan in 1970, like the early 70s would be another proto-punk band, also U.S. But Horace, thank you so much. This has been such a treat to be able to like get to know you a bit better here and have you put up with us and our antics. It's definitely been an honor talking to you. Thank you so much for coming on to this.
If somebody wants to check out maybe some of your artwork or what you've got going on, where would they find you?
HoracePanterArt.com is where the art takes place, and I play in the Dirt Road Band. DirtRoadBand.com is for all updates. Perhaps we can get an American tour together at our age. We're going to party like it's 1972. Yeah.
All right, Horace. Well, I'm going to stop the recording here, but I'm not going to kick you off just yet.